Good morning. This is Faith in Our Hometown, brought to you as a community service and sponsored by Mercy Hospital, Joplin. And now, here's your host, Father Jay Friedel.
Good morning, everyone, and happy Sunday to you. Thanks for joining us for another weekend here for Faith in Our Hometown on a nice May morning. One of the things that I think that we need to always continue to remember to do is to learn how to take care of ourselves and learn how to take care of each other. And some of those things, as you know, on our show, we deal with health concerns. And one of those health concerns is what we're getting into is going to be known as ozone season. We're going to talk a little bit about that. But there are some indicators that show to us that we need to be taking care of ourselves and to take care of the other people around us who might be a little bit more vulnerable during certain times of the year. And so my guest this morning is going to be Dan Pekarek, who's our interim city manager, but for a much longer period of time, of course, has been our public health director. And so we're going to be talking a little bit about ozone season, what causes it, and what we can do to kind of protect ourselves and those people who might be vulnerable during this time. So grab a cup of coffee, come on back. We're going to be right back after this Mercy Minute, so stick around.
It was silly to be so dreading it so much because it was really no big deal. There was no pain afterwards. I was really, really hungry, so I got to have whatever I wanted to have for lunch. But you know, the rest of the day I just slept, and there was no pain, and went to work the next day. Every day that I opened up my refrigerator and saw that referral on my refrigerator, I just dreaded having to go through it. And now I just kind of laugh about it because it was no big deal. And knowing it's behind me, I just don't have to worry about it. My husband and I, we do a lot of riding, and we kind of cram everything into the weekends, but eventually, we'd like to, once we retire, we want to be able to go on vacations on our bikes and go riding on weekends a lot more, so we have a lot to look forward to.
Well, good. Again, thanks for joining us for another Sunday morning at Faith in Our Hometown. My guest this morning is Dan Pekarek. Dan has been a lifetime member of the Joplin community, correct?
Most of my life, yes.
Yeah. Well, Dan, welcome. Tell everybody a little bit about yourself, and then let's talk about ozone season.
Well, I've been, as you mentioned, I'm the director of the City Health Department here in Joplin. I've been with the city just almost 33 years with the Health Department. You also mentioned that wear a different hat right now, interim city manager. In my real life, I'm the director of the Health Department. I also chair a group called the Four State Clean Air Alliance, which does work in the area of ground level ozone, trying to do education with the community about ways of preventing that.
Yeah. So why do we worry about ozone this time of the year, especially?
Well, ozone season around in this part of the world generally starts about March and goes to about November. The concern about ozone, ground level ozone in particular, it can cause certain health effects, especially those individuals who are perhaps respiratory compromised already. Somebody who has asthma or COPD, it can make life harder for them, make those symptoms and aggravate those symptoms and make them even worse than the ones that they already have. It can be especially tough also on individuals maybe that work outside in a strenuous activity, maybe athletes that are outside on a high ground level ozone day. It can also has environmental effects. It can affect vegetation. It can cause stress vegetation, make it more susceptible to insects and disease.
Wow, I didn't even think about the vegetation. I was thinking about just about the human, purveyors of that air and not the others. But I guess what affects one thing affects all of it, really.
Sure.
Yeah. So these we obviously this is one of those things that is a real challenge for somebody who's already perhaps might be, as you said, breathing compromised. With folks who might be struggling with those things, and of course on a day like this, it just makes it makes it worse.
Right. Yeah. Especially those individuals that are outside a lot and really being maybe exerting themselves outside on those kind of days.
Yeah. So where does all this stuff come from? Where does all this ozone?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and people get confused sometimes. We talk about ozone, and when they think, well, I thought ozone was good. Well, up in the upper atmosphere, ozone is good. It protects us from UV radiation. But at the ground level, it's not so good. Again, it causes those health and environmental effects that we've talked about. So, you know, it's just it is a challenge. I mean, from multiple directions, I guess. You know, a lot of times when I'm on shows and talking about ground level ozone or talking to a group, they think, well, you know, really, Joplin, Missouri, ground level ozone? You know, this is something for big cities.
Right, and that's kind of like, you know, when I was, you know, exploring it, I was like, well, you know, we don't seem to have that many bad air days in Joplin.
Well, in most cases, that's probably true. For many years, it was an issue that was primarily associated with larger metropolitan areas. But over time, as we have become more knowledgeable about the effects of ground level ozone, the kind of health effects that we're now aware of as those environmental effects, as we become more aware of those effects, the federal government has started ratcheting down that level. That's you know, the concern level,
right?
And actually a regulatory level. So it started back in the 20 and 30 years ago. It was 85 parts per billion, and well, now we're down to a new level of 70 parts per billion. That's what the federal government has said is the level that you should try to stay below. Anything above that, and your community is considered to be in non-attainment for this standard, because there is a ground level ozone standard. And if your community is above that standard for enough times, your community can then be found to be in non-attainment, and there can be certain things that can, you know, happen from regulatory standpoint, can happen to a community. You've been in a big city where they have the big boots on the gas pumps and things like that. They're trying to capture all those vapors when you're pumping gas.
Right.
So
you know, you see signs of this when you travel, obviously,
sure.
Into larger markets. So in other words, to this point in time, we've not been one of the, if you will, bad air cities that we have to be further regulated. And obviously we want to stay that way.
And well, I'll tell you, back a few years ago, we were very close. Actually, we had some days where we were in exceedance of that 75 parts per billion. That was back when the standard was 75. And again, it's just recently, in October of 15, was lowered to 70 parts per billion. But yeah, there for a few years, we were actually, we were bumping that and actually over the 75 part per billion level. That was back, I think the last time that occurred was probably in about 2013. We have been had better ground level ozone years since then. You got to remember, ground level ozone is caused when a couple of different things are in the atmosphere and they mix on a hot summer day. And one's called nitrogen oxides. The other is volatile organic compounds. And when those VOCs and those NOx mix on a hot summer day, you get ground level ozone. So we've been fortunate to have several cooler than normal summers for a few years in a row. Those lower temperatures drastically affect the amount of ground level ozone formation, in one area. So, you know, I'm one of the few people in the summer months. I love to see cooler days. I love to see rainy days, because that makes our ground level.
Two of us, friend. Yeah,
that makes the ground level ozone formation not as bad. I'd like to think that the work that this committee's been doing, the Fourth State Clean Air Alliance, is having some effect on that as well.
Well, just raising awareness like we're trying to do today, it hopefully will give people, again, a little bit more of a nudge. So you talk about this area. Hopefully we got our slide that we can put up here, but in this, if they've got it and can show it, this area takes in our portion here of, I mean, it's kind of like another four-state map like we're used to seeing.
It's fairly similar. The EPA, when they look at a community, whether they're in attainment or non-attainment with one of the air quality standards, the federal air quality standards, they generally look at the metropolitan area. So for Joplin, that's primarily Jasper and Newton counties. So if they were to say, okay, Joplin, you're in non-attainment, they're going to lump all of Jasper and Newton County in that. So we started out, when we started the committee, the work of the committee, we really were looking at the metro area. Now, from our perspective, we also want to look to areas primarily south and southwest of Joplin, because where do the winds come from in the summer months? From south and southwest of us. And ground level ozone in Joplin isn't entirely dependent upon emissions of VOCs and NOx just from Joplin. It's also tied to those emissions that are occurring south and southwest of us. So I've seen data from EPA that actually indicates that on certain days, depending on the atmospheric conditions and such, we can be affected by emissions as far as south as the Gulf of Mexico.
Interesting.
So it can literally just kind of follows up I-44 and Oklahoma metro area, Tulsa metro area. Those emissions can, in certain atmospheric conditions, actually affect our ground level ozone on days. So you'll see that map. It shows Jasper and Newton County, but it also looks west to Cherokee County, and it looks southwest to Ottawa County. And so our partners in this right now are Jasper and Newton counties, Cherokee County to the west, and the tribal nations, the 9 tribal nations in Ottawa County, Oklahoma. They are part of our 4-state Clean Air Alliance.
And that again, to get to the heart of why that matters to all of us is the fact that we want to make sure that we are safe and that we're healthy, and so that it's one of those things of, it's not just I don't like to always think about, and I guess you can take the hit for it, but I don't like to think about the government, and especially in situations like this, doing things just to make things difficult or a regulation for the sake of a regulation. But it's really about health. So you mentioned the fact that they lowered that and that they've kept lowering it because they're aware of more of the effects. What are some of those effects, in terms of some of that? Just in terms of, or what have we noticed, or what do we know more that have helped us, or that have caused them to lower that, why we should be more concerned?
Well, and again, and we see this in just about all of the areas that I work in, but as science becomes more precise and we become more aware of detrimental effects of certain things in the environment, or, on human health or environmental health, it used to be, again, many years ago, we didn't think that 85 parts per billion we thought that was a detrimental health level for ground level ozone, and now we know it's down at, they've taken that all the way down to 70 parts per billion. And again, it just, I think as science becomes more specific and better at detecting those health effects on humans or the environment, they are trying to find that sweet spot, if you will. Where is the spot that we need to keep it below in order for those folks with
healthy.
COPD or the folks with asthma to not have bad days?
Now, is this one of those things that is going to continue to get rolled back, or are we just going to have to wait and see what the science tells us?
Well, at some point, there's a lot of argument out there. At some point, when do you hit background level? What is the natural level of ground level ozone in an area? Because it's not just things that humans do that create ground level ozone. We can talk about those at some point, but it's also, ground level ozone can be caused in nature as well. There's something called biogenics, and that's when we look at the VOC formation from trees. They're putting out certain things like that. And those precursors of VOC and the NOx then form ground level ozone. So at some point you get to what's considered the background level that frankly you're never ever going to get lower than that. And so I don't know where that is, but there's a lot of discussion about that in kind of the ozone arena.
Well, we've been talking with Dan Pekarek, who's our health director here in Joplin, about the reality of ozone in our lives and how that affects all of those things, especially for folks who might be a little compromised health-wise, but why it's good policy for us to kind of stay below certain levels of that anyway. So we're going to continue talking about that when we come right back. We're going to take a quick break, but don't go away because we're going to be right back after a quick break.
You're watching Faith in Our Hometown on KSN TV, brought to you as a community service of Mercy Hospital, Joplin.
So again, if you've joined us recently, my guest this morning is Dan Pekarek, who's our City Health Director, also our Interim City Manager, but that'd be a whole different show. But at any rate, we're talking a little bit about the reality of ozone and what causes that and why we need to be concerned about it and why we want to stay below certain levels for the public health interest. So Dan, where do these sources of ozone come from? Where does all this stuff happen? Now you mentioned, that we were right before the break, you mentioned that some of it comes naturally, but what are the major sources of what contributes to this?
Well, the major sources are going to be human caused. Those kinds of, we are the source of most of NOx and VOC emissions. NOx emissions are, generally speaking, the nitrogen oxides are generally going to be it's a function of combustion. So anything from a campfire to the smallest gasoline engine to the largest gasoline turbine, whatever, anything in between, your engine in your car, the gas furnace in your home. So any NOx is basically, for the most part, is a product of combustion. So anything that is combusting is probably emitting NOx, and that's going into the atmosphere. The VOCs are largely, the volatile organic compounds. And, when you're pumping gas in your car on a hot summer day and you kind of see the vapors coming, that's gasoline volatilizing into the atmosphere. That's a VOC. When you're out in the garage and you're doing some, painting something, and you've got the paint thinner can open and you can smell that odor, that's that paint thinner volatilizing into the atmosphere. So
even I will tell you, altar candles, you can see it when you were sitting there, and sometimes you can just see that, you can see the smoke and the stuff going up. So it's similar, and just think about all those different ways that those are present there in our lives, in every home, every day, animals, all that stuff.
So those are the two primary sources if you lump the primary sources for NOx and VOCs together, in just about any community probably, in our community as well, it's going to be what we call mobile sources. In other words, vehicular traffic. So we look at that as one of the key sources, but again, for the for the VOCs, we look at solvent use. One of the things that the Four-State Clean Air Alliance does is tries to educate, like we're doing today, tries to educate the community and the small businesses in the community about the things that they can do around their own home that will hope to reduce that NOx and VOC formation.
So like, just to be practical right now, since we're talking about, what would those, for example, be? Just give us some ideas.
So, if you're out working in the garage and you're doing some, cabinet work, refinishing a cabinet or something, we always suggest, and we've got an actual plan document that we try to get out to people, but it talks about trying to use low VOC paints. If you go to a paint store now, you didn't see this 5 and 10 years ago, but now if you watch, you'll see labels that say low VOC. And so we suggest folks use low VOC paints. While you're having to use that paint thinner in the garage, make sure and cap it securely when you're done. Don't leave open cans of paint thinner sitting there and just volatilizing into the environment. When you're filling up your car, we talked about seeing those vapors going into the atmosphere. We suggest that you fill your car up early in the morning or late in the afternoon or in the evening. Cooler temperatures, less volatilization going on.
All right.
Do that work in your garage, morning or late in the afternoon or the evening when the temperatures aren't quite as hot.
Because you can really smell that stuff more on a hot summer day.
If you're out there working on a cold winter day, you don't get near the odor formation because it's not volatilizing as much.
Right.
A lot of the education we do talks about trying to reduce the amount you have to drive your car. We look in our plan and support communities that try to do street improvements that reduce idle time. Because the less idle time, the less cars are emitting, VOCs on that or NOx on that day, the less ground level formation is going to occur. So we're always supportive of street projects that reduce idle time. That we look for what we call multimodal projects, sidewalks, bicycle lanes on streets, public transportation, those kinds of things.
See, all this stuff fits in with the health department and the city of Joplin, or the larger areas. They all come together. And I mean, and I'll just be honest that, I'm really glad that there are people like you who are doing some of that work for all the rest of us, because I don't have a tendency to sit around and think about some of those things.
Well,
and that's why we have a Department of Public Health.
Well, and I would, the four-state clean air alliance formed several years ago when, frankly, the Department of Natural Resources, which is the state agency that regulates air quality in the state of Missouri, they actually came to me and said, hey, did you realize your community is almost in non-attainment for ground level ozone? And I, frankly, at that time said, no, can't
Really?
be. That's St.
Yeah.
Louis, that's Kansas City, that's not Joplin, Missouri. And that was probably back in about 2009 or so, 2008, and we've been working on this ever since. But the four-state clean air alliance isn't just city folks and county. It's a group of local government officials, city, county. It's the tribal nations represented from the 9 tribal nations in Ottawa County. We've got business. We have industry. Liberty Empire is at the table. Carthage Water and Electric as another provider of utility services in the area is at the table. So we've got business, industry, local government, state government, several folks that sit at that table on that four-state clean air alliance and look at and trying to figure out ways where we can educate the public about the issue, because so much of what, the big industries are already regulated.
Right.
They're regulated by the state and federal government, so their emissions are essentially being taken
Already
care
pretty
of.
much taken care of.
It's the things that we can do as individuals or small businesses. Turn your thermostat up a degree or two on a hot summer day. It's not having to run as much. You're not having to get as much electricity. Not as much electricity is having to be generated at a power plant. It's just lots of little things like that, and we try to put all that information on a location. We have a website that we have for the four-state clean air alliance. It's called, you can Google summerair.org, and
Okay.
it'll take you to our website.
Summerair.org.
And it is just full of good information about things that you can do around the home or in your business on ways to try to reduce those NOx and VOC emissions.
See, and again, this is one of those things of, I have a tendency to like the conversation at this level because basically it's supposed to be a win-win for everybody.
It's surprisingly, when we start talking about this, when you start thinking about it, most of the things that we're suggesting that you do actually save you money at the same time.
Yeah.
Drive efficiently. Drive a car that gets good gas mileage, or try to carpool. Try to do things, walk sometimes rather than drive. Turn your thermostat up a few degrees. Those kind of things also save you money.
Slowly.
Accelerate
So,
slowly.
so
Keep your car tuned up. Keep your lawnmower tuned up. So everything that pretty much that we suggest that you do to help the environment is also helping your pocketbook too.
And see, again, and not only are we doing that, but a guy like me says, and that's also just taking good care of each other. I mean, that's learning how to help care for each other and to care for the planet. Because, again, as you said at the very beginning, I was just like, we don't want to stress the environment either. The same way we don't want to stress any of our brothers and sisters out there who might be struggling with, respiratory issues.
COPD.
It's just one piece feeds another, and it's how we all take care of each other within that context. All right, so one of the things would be to reduce those things. Anything else that we should be aware of, that we should get our viewers to think about or concentrate on in those regards?
Well, I think it's always important. It's just important for everybody to become educated about the issue. It doesn't make a difference what the issue is. You should become educated about it. And that's what we ask people to do, is take the time, visit our website, learn about the things that you can do.
Summerair.org.
Yes.
Summerair.org.
And take those few moments to go there and take a look at it. And again, I think you'll see that what we're saying are pretty common sense things. It's not big government trying to say you've got to do this. It's saying, these are voluntary measures that you can take that will hopefully help the environment in our community, help the health of our community, and at the end of the day also help to keep our community in attainment with a federal air quality standard. That we don't want to be in a non-attainment community.
So this goes back to some of what we were talking about. So most of this extra stuff is from our transportation and all those kinds of things. Where else does it come from? Because this is kind of fascinating to me.
Well, again, from a NOx emission standpoint, most of it is, it's combustion related, so most of it is from transportation. We do sit at the intersection of two interstate highways. I mean, look at I-44 any day of the week, and you see how much vehicular traffic is going up and down I-44. Now we've got I-49. And so, and as I mentioned, the predominant winds in this part of the country are from the south and southwest. So anything that's going up and down I-44 is blowing our way on a hot summer day. And so we're getting those emissions. You've got Grand Lake of the Cherokees just south and west of us. All that boat traffic on a hot summer day, those emissions are coming our way. And the monitor for Joplin area is in Alba, Missouri. And the Department of Natural Resources didn't put it there for just grins. They put it there because it's downwind of Joplin. So that monitor at that location is going to give them an indication of what the Joplin air quality is like. We also have access to monitor data in Miami, Oklahoma, from the tribes there, and that gives us a little bit of an indication what the air quality is like coming before it gets to Joplin, and then we've got, and coincidentally, it's always better, and then the monitor in Alba is always worse. So, yeah, I mean,
so we're doing our part to.
Yeah, I think we are. I think we're trying to do everything that we can with our local capabilities, and that is primarily going to be educating the public and trying to get people to do things on their own. And you know, for us to try to encourage those communities, well, like I say, if you're going to do a street project, make sure you're doing things that reduce idle time. Roundabouts reduce idle time. Some people don't like them, but they reduce idle time.
Interesting. So. Again, my guest this morning, Dan Pekarek, the City Health Department and the City of Joplin, talking about air quality and ozone season. So again, we're going to be right back after this Mercy Minute. Don't go away. We'll be right back to wrap up.
I've had mammograms on the bus probably 12 to 15 times. It has been a lifesaver for me.
The quality of the reading is exactly the same. I will go back home tonight, download these images into the same computer system that the other images that they've been taking at the clinic today, and they'll all be read.
The earlier the better. Don't wait, don't put it off. Get started and do it every year.
Well, again, thanks for joining us for another Sunday morning here at Faith in Our Hometown. This morning we were talking about something that really does affect all of us. That's the air that we breathe. Rather than looking at some of these things as just Big Brother or an invasive federal government looking over our shoulder to make sure we're doing things, it really is about taking care of our planet and taking care of each other. And if we can use some common sense things, and reduce some of our ways of contributing to the situation, we're really going to be helping each other out and helping ourselves out at the same time. As Dan was very clear to point out, most of the same things, if we're helping somebody else, we're also helping our pocketbooks at the same time. So indeed, let's continue to take care of one another. Enjoy your Sunday. God bless, and come back and join us for another Sunday for Faith in Our Hometown.
Thanks for watching. Faith in Our Hometown can be seen Sunday mornings at 6:30 and 9 a.m. on KSN. Brought to you as a community service and sponsored by Mercy Hospital, Joplin.